Thanks, Lynn. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you again for joining us during this transformative time in Division I college sports. I have the privilege of serving as the CEO of the Knight Commission on Intercollegiate Athletics. The Knight Commission is an independent leadership group with a legacy of leading reforms that prioritize college athletes' education, health, safety, and success. In collaboration with Elon University Poll, we completed 2 national surveys. One, a public opinion poll, for which results were released in August. And then second, a national survey of Division I campus leaders on key issues in college sports, which is the focus of this session today. We want to thank the campus leaders who participated in this survey. As we all know, Division I began operating under new rules on July 1, ushered in by the House settlement. This survey examined a number of major changes Division I leaders are navigating, and the title of this survey report, as folks here in the room can see on the screen, is College Sports at a Crossroads. I'll note as well for those in the room that we actually did not select the hotel room for its carpet, even though it matches perfectly the graphic of our report. So college sports at a crossroads aptly describes this critical moment. Now, with Congress debating potential federal legislation, these results could not be more timely. I'd like to introduce our presenters. First, to my left, Jason Husser is the director of Elon University Poll and a professor of political science and public policy at Elon University. And joining me from the Knight Commission are Peter Roby and Beth Brooke. Peter brings a perspective of a former Division I basketball player and coach, and was a leader in college sports for more than 4 decades, including more than 10 years as the Division I AD at Northeastern. Beth Brooke is the former Global Vice Chair of Public Policy at EY and a current board member of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. Beth played college basketball at Purdue University. Before we get started, let me outline what you can expect over the next 20 or 25 minutes as we provide an overview of this national survey and the key findings. We'll start with a brief overview of the methodology. Then I will review the overarching findings of the Division I leaders' responses on the direction, financial concerns, and the academic mission and standards of college sports. The next major portion of findings relate directly to the athlete experience, including transfer policies and the impact of the House settlement. The fourth section will address the impact of the new Division I model on women and collegiate Olympic sports. Next, we'll explore some of the findings around potential solutions like federal legislation and changes to the governing structures. The presentation will conclude with summary comments from Peter Roby. Now I'll hand it over to Jason to explain the methodology and the representative sample we were able to achieve among Division I leaders. Jason?
Great. Thanks, Amy. I'm excited to be here with you all to share the survey's methodology and a snapshot of the respondents. The survey was distributed to leaders at all Division I institutions via an emailed survey available through Qualtrics. This survey was opened between July 29th and August 22nd, 2025, garnering 376 responses from university presidents and chancellors, athletic directors, senior women administrators, and faculty athletic representatives. These campus positions were identified for the survey because they are legislatively mandated leadership roles within the existing NCAA Division I governing structure. Overall, I think we captured a very good sample of Division I leaders through this survey. The response rate of 26% is excellent. Usually we'll see a 10% response rate among a group of hard to reach individuals like these leaders. So I think we did a good job with that. This 26% response rate provides a statistically representative sample of these Division I leaders' positions, and the margin of error is plus or minus 4.4%. While we collected informational data for each subgroup, it's more challenging to draw representative conclusions for each particular subgroup as subgroups decrease in size. Response rates for all the positions can be found in the full report. Again, the survey can be found to be representative of Division I leaders' attitudes as a whole. Similar to providing detail on response rates by leadership position, the report provides more detail regarding institutional profile information for these responses. As shown on this slide, the full report also breaks out responses by institution type and by each program's football classification. There are some questions where we compare responses between FBS and non-FBS leaders. An overarching takeaway from my perspective as someone who has managed hundreds of surveys is that were very strong sentiments expressed by these campus leaders. When I see agreement consistently in the 70 to 90% range across high stakes issues, I see a signal of shared urgency and clarity among Division I leaders that is notably rare in complex and evolving policy areas like college athletics. The numbers we talk about in this session combine categories of responses like extremely positive, somewhat positive, to reflect overall trends. And again, the specific details can be found in the full report. Now I'll turn it back over to Amy to share the key findings.
Thanks, Jason. So overall, respondents expressed really strong sentiments, as Jason outlined. Division I leaders as a whole indicated overwhelmingly negative views on the future of Division I college sports and deep concern about financial sustainability. In contrast with these negative views, the leaders affirmed an unwavering commitment to the academic mission and standards of college sports. Now let's look at some of the questions that illustrate these overarching views. So first, if you look at the slides, I want to orient you to the format of the slides you'll see throughout the presentation and that you'll see in the report. The top bar in red shows the results for all respondents, and this bar shows the representative finding for Division I leaders collectively. This bar is the most important to view. The slides also show the responses by FBS and non-FBS leaders, as well as breakouts for each of the NCAA, the 4 NCAA legislative campus leadership positions: the presidents, athletics directors, faculty athletic representatives, and senior women administrators. Some of the subgroup bars may total slightly less or more than 100% due to rounding, so you'll see some variation there. Now let's turn to the results. The question for the first survey finding is shown on the left. For the question is NCAA Division I headed in a positive or negative direction? As you can see in the top respondents bar, nearly 2/3 of the leaders at 62% believe Division I is headed in a negative direction. This frank assessment is most pronounced among university presidents, who responded with 80% of them who believe Division I is headed in a negative direction. In the next question, leaders were asked whether the current Division I structure continues to be viable as a single division within the NCAA. 62% of all respondents expressed doubt about the sustainability of the current Division I structure. This sentiment, also expressed by a majority of presidents and athletics directors, may signal that the current alignment of Division I institutions is seen as increasingly unworkable. Going to the next slide, the ability of institutions to maintain their competitive classifications in the changing landscape is the next finding. 56% of all leaders are concerned about whether their schools can sustain their classification levels in Division I, a figure that rises to 60% among non-FBS leaders. Again, those are leaders at schools whose athletic programs do not include FBS football. The next finding is about finances. Leaders share deep concern about the financial challenges in the current landscape. When asked about the level of concern regarding their athletics programs' current or future reliance on institutional funds and student fees to balance their budgets, nearly 80% of Division I leaders indicate concern, with 48% saying they're extremely concerned. Expressing the greatest amount of concern were leaders most responsible for finances, with 86% of presidents and 80% of athletics directors sharing these views. As you can see, the survey responses did not show a significant difference between the views of FBS and non-FBS leaders on this particular question, signaling intense budgetary strain that is affecting schools at all competitive levels. There are mixed views on college sports moving to an even more professional sports model than what current rules allow today. Leaders were asked if they support allowing schools to provide compensation to athletes for playing their sport. This question has some nuance that Division I leaders understand. Specifically, the new rules do allow schools to provide NIL compensation and new financial benefits to athletes. However, the rules do not allow institutions to compensate athletes strictly for playing their sport. The survey found a substantial difference between the views of leaders at FBS and those at non-FBS schools on this question, with 45% of FBS leaders supporting pay-for-play compensation and a significantly smaller percentage of non-FBS leaders supporting at 27%. So amid the deep concerns we've just reviewed, Division I leaders expressed an unwavering commitment to the academic mission of college sports and current academic standards. Specifically, as this slide highlights, leaders expressed near unanimous support for athletes being enrolled full-time and taking classes, with 98% saying this is important, and almost the same number, 99%, expressing the importance of athletes graduating. Leaders also show overwhelming support for teams continuing to meet academic standards for postseason competition. The strong support for these standards emphasizes the collective viewpoint of these leaders that the academic mission remains central to the purpose of Division I sports. This sentiment is also reflected in the findings of the public opinion poll that we released in August, signaling clear consensus that the academic standards and mission of college sports are essential. I will now turn it over to Peter Roby to discuss key findings around the college athlete experience and the impact of the House settlement.
Thanks, Amy. Beyond college athletes receiving their NIL rights and the House settlement impacts, there has arguably been no bigger shift than the introduction of the transfer portal, and administrators have pretty strong feelings about it. Leaders were asked to describe the impact of the transfer portal on college sports. And 86% of them said that the transfer portal is having a negative impact on the enterprise, with nearly half saying the impact is extremely negative. Every subgroup responded with an overwhelming negative impact. Also regarding transfers, leaders were asked their position on current rules that allow athletes to transfer as often as they choose with immediate eligibility to play for the schools without penalty. 84% of leaders expressed opposition to the current rules. Like the previous question, this finding also shows that Division I leaders are consistent across subgroups in their opposition to current transfer rules. These findings and a couple of others in the survey underscore the strong opposition leaders have to the current college athlete transfer environment. All findings are available in the report. Another top issue with athletes' eligibility is the number of full seasons athletes can compete. Leaders were asked, how important is it to limit college athletes to 4 full seasons of competition eligibility? 77% of all leaders believe it is very or somewhat important to limit eligibility to 4 full seasons, with even stronger views on this question by presidents at 90%. The next 2 slides will address the impact of the House settlement. The House settlement represents a monumental and disruptive shift in the operation of Division I. Leaders were asked about the future impact of the settlement on Division I as a whole. 76% of Division I leaders responded with a negative outlook, including 88% of the responding college presidents and chancellors. While Division I leaders believe the impact of the House settlement will be negative on Division I as a whole, there are varying opinions on how the settlement will affect the overall experience of athletes across different sports. This summary slide highlights only the positive and negative responses of athletics directors who are more optimistic than Division I leaders overall on this question. Respondents could select positive, negative, or unsure, and the percentage of unsure is not shown on this slide. 3/4 of Division I athletics directors' respondents believe the House settlement will have a positive impact on the experience of FBS football athletes. With regard to men's and women's basketball athletes, 63% foresee a positive impact for men's basketball athletes. Half expect a positive impact for women's basketball athletes. The survey results in the full report show that these Division I athletics directors' views are generally 12 to 14 percentage points more positive than the overall respondents. When asked about the experience of athletes in sports other than football and men's and women's basketball, nearly 3/4 of ADs say that the House settlement terms will have a negative impact. I'm pleased to welcome Beth Brooke to more deeply discuss the potential consequences of the House settlement on women's and collegiate Olympic sports, as well as solutions to these concerns.
Thank you, Peter. As Peter just reported on that last slide, the negative sentiment in the survey on the impact on our female and male athletes in the non-revenue Olympic sports is extreme. So we went deeper in the survey and we asked D1 leaders several questions about the value of Olympic sports, collegiate Olympic sports, and their support for different incentives and potential new revenue streams to fund those collegiate Olympic sports. One of the most striking findings from the survey is the consensus around the importance of collegiate Olympic sports. Before I go into the findings, just as a reminder, in the United States, our U.S. Olympic team is almost entirely dependent on the collegiate system for the training and development of our Olympic athletes. By way of background, the United States is the only country in the world that does not receive any direct federal funding for Team USA's Olympic sport development or to the USOPC. This is widely misunderstood, and we identified that in our August public opinion poll, where less than 20% of the public was aware that the USOPC and the collegiate system receives not $1 of direct federal funding. So again, one of the most striking findings in the D1 Leaders Survey is the overwhelming consensus around the importance of collegiate Olympic sports. Nearly all respondents, at 93%, believe it is important for universities to continue offering collegiate Olympic sports such as gymnastics, swimming, track and field, and others that are non-generating Olympic sports. 92% of leaders also agree that these programs are vital to the success of Team USA. When asked about funding, D1 leaders expressed strong support for the new public financing mechanisms, with nearly 3/4 supporting the use of federal funds to help finance collegiate Olympic sports and scholarships. Leaders were also asked about the use of revenues from a federal tax on sport gambling operators to create a national fund to help finance collegiate Olympic sports that develop national team members and to provide broad-based opportunities. 82% of leaders support this new type of federal funding. When FBS leaders were asked about other potential funding sources or financial incentives for collegiate Olympic sports, a majority of these FBS leaders supported creating a new allocation from a share of the college football playoff revenues to provide new incentives for schools that develop U.S. Olympians and offer broad-based sports opportunities. So what the survey is basically saying is they know the collegiate system for Olympic sports is critical, and they support various new types of funding to support those sports. I guess that's not really a surprising survey result, given the financial pressures that Amy reported and the negative outlook for non-revenue sports that Peter reported. Now, I want to share the results that we've gathered regarding gender equity, results that have taken on added importance in this moment of fundamental disruption. We asked leaders how well universities have provided female college athletes with equitable opportunities, financial assistance, and treatment compared to male athletes. As you can see, 43% of all D1 leaders responded that institutions have not gone far enough. 44% of leaders believe institutions have been about right. And only 6% of leaders believe institutions have gone too far in providing equitable opportunities for women. But to me, the interesting findings here are in the subgroups. As you can see, 64% of athletic directors believe institutions have been about right in providing equitable opportunities and treatment to female athletes. Hold that thought as we look at some more findings. 64% of ADs believe they've done enough for female athletes. So as we look forward, one of the most significant questions in this new era of college sports is how the House settlement will impact gender equity, and specifically how Title IX applies to institutions providing NIL compensation and other financial benefits such as revenue sharing. When asked about these new types of institutional payments to athletes should be applied, here's what was said. 47% of all respondents said that these new institutional payments should be based on how much money an athlete's sport generates or the athlete's marketability. In contrast, 31% said the new payments should be included in the total amount of institutional financial assistance, like athletic scholarships, and distributed equitably to female and male athletes. Nearly a quarter were unsure about how to allocate the new payments. However, let's look again at the athletic directors. As a subgroup, athletic directors held different views on this question, with more than 78% versus the 47% of all respondents. Athletic directors said 78% that these payments should be based on how much money an athlete's sports generates or the athlete's marketability. Keep in mind, these are the ADs who think they've gone far enough on payments to female athletes. This deep division on how to allocate new institutional payments to athletes exposes one of the most complex legal and philosophical challenges that lie ahead. Continuing this focus on gender equity, leaders were asked if female college athletes overall will be in a worse or better situation under the new rules that allow for institutions to provide new athlete NIL and revenue share payments, as well as offer more scholarships. 55% of all D1 leaders predict that female athletes will be in a worse situation, and only 25% believe that their situation will be better. 20% predict their situation won't change from the status quo. Again, the outlier group is the athletic directors. A clear takeaway from these findings is that D1 leaders are concerned about the impact of the House settlement and their implication of the new D1 operating model on both women's sports and collegiate Olympic sports. But they are also supportive of some other funding solutions or other opportunities that leaders supported for college Olympic sports. So with that, let me turn it back over to Amy, and she'll now review potential solutions to some of the broader challenges that were tested in the survey. Amy?
Thanks, Beth. So this next topic, the slide and then the finding relates directly to the topic of our last session, federal legislation on college sports. Leaders were asked to gauge their support for new federal legislation that could impact several operational areas. And here are those findings. 86% support a national standard to regulate athlete NIL compensation. 78% support laws that prevent college athletes from being classified as employees. 77% support national rules that supersede conflicting state laws. Division I leaders were also asked two separate questions about their support for creating limits on spending on specific sports or budget categories. When asked about creating these spending limits through federal legislation, 69% of Division I leaders expressed support. When asked about creating legally defensible spending limits without federal legislation through actions taken by the NCAA, conferences, or institutions, 72% of Division I leaders expressed support. Leaders were also asked about potential new structures, and the majority of Division I leaders agree that a new governing body should be created for Power IV football separate from the NCAA. This idea is backed by 50% of FBS leaders and 57% of non-FBS leaders, with support being the highest among the ADs, with 66% holding this view. Additionally, only FBS leaders were asked about their views on having a single executive or commissioner to provide leadership for the sport of FBS football, not just for its national championship, the college football playoff. 58% of FBS leaders supported the creation of this new leadership position. The responses to this question and the one before it suggest support for more specialized governance structure for Power IV or FBS football outside of the traditional NCAA framework. Concepts on alternative competition structures were also tested in the survey, and the most compelling finding revealed an openness to more regional scheduling for some sports. Specifically, this slide shows that 82% of Division I leaders support loosening requirements for regular season conference scheduling in sports other than basketball to allow greater flexibility for regional competitive alliances. So this concludes the overview of the key findings. There's obviously a lot of information that we've covered, and so you can access the full results of this Division I Leaders Survey by scanning the QR code or visiting the link for the Division I Leaders Poll as listed on the screen. We again want to thank Elon University Poll for their partnership on this survey. This Division I Leaders Survey captures candid reactions to the sweeping changes occurring and offers valuable insights from leaders into what lies ahead. We believe these findings can inform lawmakers and leaders as they work to build a new model for Division I college sports. Peter Roby will now make some concluding remarks about the key takeaways, and as I mentioned in the introduction, Peter was a college athlete, coach, and administrator, so certainly brings a unique perspective over his 4 decades of experience in college sports. Peter?
Thank you, Amy. I want to thank Jason and Beth as well for their participation in this survey report. As the survey report title makes clear, Division I college sports is certainly at a crossroads. As Amy said, as a former AD, coach, and player, I understand the strong concerns leaders expressed about the current environment with high rates of athlete transfers. It's clear leaders want to see a change, and there is movement on the issue, both in federal legislation being proposed and in NCAA governance decisions to change the transfer portal windows. We also heard that Division I leaders are deeply concerned about finances, with 7 in 10 leaders supporting some type of spending limits. Decades of increasing revenues in college sports has shown that college sports doesn't have a revenue problem. It has a spending problem. We received alarming findings about what leaders predict for the future of women's and collegiate Olympic sports. The need to protect these programs in any federal legislation that remakes college sports has been discussed, and I certainly support that approach and look forward to hearing more in the next panel. There is unequivocal support for the primacy of education by Division I leaders and the public. Division I leaders support a regional scheduling model which is consistent with putting academics first when putting schedules together. This should result in conferences making decisions to prioritize regional scheduling for their schools. The values of student well-being and academic success should drive leadership decisions moving forward, not revenue generation. These survey results make it clear that current trends in Division I athletics are not consistent with our stated mission and values, and the practitioners want the change. The current legal landscape makes division-wide rules challenging to say the least, but conference-specific rule changes are allowed, and someone needs to lead by example in hopes that others will follow. I'll turn it back over to Len to give instructions before our next session. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Peter. And thank you, Amy, Beth, and a special thank you to Jason Husser, Dan Anderson, and Bill Squadron with Elon University for their leadership in providing help on the public opinion poll and the Division I Leaders Survey. Obviously, these findings are critical in informing the discussion of solutions as we go forward.